O he Vaishnava Thakura Doyara Sagara Edase Karuna Kori. Dia para chaya shuro he amai. Dia para chaya shuro he amai tomara charana dori. Chaya bhega domi chaya dosha shodhi Chaya guna deho dase. Chaya satsanga deho he amare boshashi sangerashe. Ekaki ama nahi pai balo Harinama Sankirtane. God, thank you. Tumi kripa kori sharabindu diya deho Krishna nama dhane. Krishna se tomar, Krishna dite paro, tomara shakati ache. Amito Kanga Krishna Krishna Bodhi Daitava Pache Pache. Ohe Vaishnava Thakur Jayara Sagara Idase Karuna Kori. Jaya Vaishnava Thakur, Vaishnava Thakur, Vaishnava Thakur, Jaya Vaishnava Thakur. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Lord Nitai and Lord Gaurachandra are very merciful. They are the essence of all incarnations. The specific significance of these incarnations is that they introduce a process of chanting and dancing that is simply joyful. My dear brothers, I request that you just worship Lord Caitanya and Nityananda with a firm conviction and faith. If one wants to be Krishna conscious by this process, one has to give up his engagement in sense gratification. Become absorbed in worshipping Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda and simply chant Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, without any material motive. My dear brothers, just try to examine this. Within the three worlds, there is no one like Lord Chaitanya or Lord Nityananda. Their merciful qualities are so great that upon hearing them, even birds and beasts cry and stones melt. But I, Lochan Das, regret that I am entrapped by sense gratification. I have no attraction for the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, and therefore Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, is punishing me by not allowing me to be attracted by this. Parama Karuna Pavandri Chala Nitai Gaura Chandra Sarvavatar Sarashiramani Kevalananda Kanda Bajo Bajo Bai Chaitanya Nitai Sudrida Vishwasa Kori Vishaya Chadiya Shirasimajiya Mukhe Bolo Hari Hari Dekho ore bai Tripurvani nai Emona doya ladata Pashupaki jure Pashana vidare Shune jar kuna katha Samsare majia rohili pohila Shepare nahi lo asha Karama Unjai Shamana Kohai Lochana Dasa Parama Karuna Pahundi Jana Nitai Gaura Chandra Nitai Gaura Chandra Nitai Gaura Chandra Gaura Chandra Jaya Gaura Nitai Gaura Nitai Gaura Nitai Jaya Gaura Nitai Premanande Haribo Ujvala Guravara Deham Vilasita Niravari Bhava Videham Tribhuvana Pavana Kripaya Lesham Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Shachitannayam Gagaram Tarababa Vikaram Durjana Tarjana Nara Vishalam Baba Baya Bhajana Karam Karunam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Shachitannayam Arunam Varadara Charu Kapolam Indu Vinindita Nakachaya Ruchiram Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai Jalpita Ninja Guna Nama Vinodam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Shachitannayam Vigalita Nayana Kamala Jaladara Ushana Navarasa Baba Vikara Tapiyapti Mantara Nritya Vilasam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Shachitannayam Tapiyapti Mantara Nritya Vilasam Chanchala Charu Charana Gati Ruchira Manjira Ranjita Pada Yuga Madhura Chandra Vinindita Shitala Varanam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Shachitannayam Chitakakti Tora Kamandalu Dandam Divya Kalevara Mundita Mundam Durjana Kalmasha Kandana Dandam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Shachitannayam Bhushana Vuraja Kavalitam Kampita Vindara Varanuchiram Malaya Virachita Ujjala Tilakam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Nindita Aruna Kamala Dalanayanam Ajanulam Ditta Shri Ruja Yugalam Kalevara Kaishora Nardaka Vesham Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Ujjala Varana Deva Bharateham Vilasita Niravari Bhava Vindeham Tribuna Pavana Rupaya Lesham Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam Jai Sachitananda, Jai Sachitananda, Jai Sachitananda, Jai Gaura Hari. Jai Sachitananda, Jai Sachitananda, Jai Sachitananda, Jai Gaura Hari. Jai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Jai Gaura Hari Bo. Viva Vaisesika, all together. Back to Vrindavan. Vibhabari Shesha Aloka Pradesha Nidrachari Utajiva Bolo Hari Hari Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Hayakiva Nrsinga Vamana Shrimadusudana Rajendra Nandana Shama Udana Gatha Kaitanya Shatha Jaya Dasharati Rama Yashoda Julala Govinda Gopala Vrindavana Purandara Gopi Priya Jana Radhika Ramana Bhuvana Sundara Bhara Ramana Kakara Makana Kaskara Gopi Jana Vasahari Brajela Rakala Gopa Vrindakala Chitta Hari Ramsita Hari Yogindra Vandana Srinandana Prajatana Bayahari Navina Nirana Rupa Manohara Mohana Vanshi Vihari Yashoda Nandana Katsani Sudana Nikunjara Savilasi Kadambakharana Rasaparayana Vrindamiti Nanivahati Anandavardhana Premanitena Ulashara Jojakama Gopangana Chitta Vinona Gunaganada Jamuna Jivana Kelipanayana Manasa Chanda Chakora Nam Surara Sakao Krishna Dasa Rakovachana Manamora Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Chapter 8, Bhagavad Gita. Junuvacha. Arjunuvacha. Arjunuvacha. Kim tad brahma kim adhyatma. Kim karma purushottama adibhutam shakim proktam adidaivam kimuchyate adiyajna katham kotra dehesmin madhusudana prayana kale chakatam geosiniyatatmapi Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Aksharam Brahma Paramham Sabhavo Dhyatmamuchyate Uta Bhavo Bhavakaro Visarga Karma Sangjita Adibhutam Sharo Bhava Purushashchari Daivatam Adiyagyohamevatra Dehe Deha Vratambara Antakale chamameva smaran mukva kalevaram yaprayati samadbhavam yati nasyatra shanshaya yang vapi smaran bhavam jajatyante kalevaram tam evaite konteya sadatad bhava bhavitaha Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanusmarad yudhyacha mayarpita mano buddhir mami vaishyasya samshayaha abhyasa yoga yuktena chetasananyagamina paramam purusham divyam Yati partanu chintayam Gavim puranam manushashitaram Anonaniyam samanusparidyaha Sarvasya dataram achintya rupam Aditya varnam tamasa parastad Priyana kale manasachalena Bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva Ruvor madhye pranamavesha samyak Satam param purushamupaiti divyam Yadaksharam veda vedo vadanti Vashanti yadyat Tayo vitaraga Yadichanto brahmacharyam charanti Tate param sangrahena pravakshe Sarvadvarani samyamya Mano hridinda rudyacha Murdhyadhayatmana pranam Astito yogadaranam Om ityekaksharam brahma Yaharan mam anusmaran ya prayati tajandeham sayati paramam gatim ananyateta satatam yomam smarati nityashaha tasyaham sulabha partha nitya yuktasya yogina mamupetya punarjanma dukhalayam ashashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gataham abrahma bhuvana loka punar avartinorjuna mam upetya tu kaunteya punar janma navidyate sahasra yuga paryantam arhat yad brahmano vidu ratrim yuga sahasrantam teho ratra vidho janaha avyakta vyaktaya sarva prabhavantya haragame ratyagame praliyante tatraiva vyaktya samjake uta grama sevayam utva bhutva praliyate ratyagame vashapartha prabhavatya haragame parastasmat tu bhavonyo vyakto vyaktat sanatanaha yaksak sarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu na vinashyati avyakto shara ityuktas tamahu paramam gatim yam prapyana nirvartante taddama paramam mama purushasa parapartha bhaktya labhyastvananyaya yasyantastani bhutani yena sarvam idang tatam yatra kali tunavritim avritim chaiva yogina prayata yanti tam kalam bakshami bharatarshapha agnir jyotir ahashukla shanmasa uttarayanam tatra prayata gachanti brahma brahma vido janaha dumo ratris tata krishna shanmasa dakshanayanam tatra chandramasam jyotir yogi prapya nivartate shukla krishne gati yete jagata shashvate mate ekaya yatya navratim anyaya vartate punaha naite sriti partha janan yogi muyati kashchana tasmat sarveshu kaleshu yoga yukto bhavarjuna vedeshu yagneshu tapassu chaiva daneshu yat punya balam pratishtam atyeti tat sarvamidam veditva yogi param stanam upaiti chadyam Om Tat Sat Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Supanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Sambhade Taraka Brahma Yoga Nama Ashtamo Dhyayaha Hari Om. Srimad Bhagavatam Chapter 1. English. Om Tat Sat Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Sambhade Taraka Brahma Yoga Nama Ashramo Jayaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We don't have a PowerPoint, eh? No PowerPoint on one? No? Can we have just the translations, please? Hare Krishna. Okay, together, and neatness counts. Please remember commas mean a slight pause. O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious. Yet, it is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes temporarily appear temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free of the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadeva Goswami. Therefore this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including relishable souls. Once, in a holy place in the forest of Naimisharanya, great sages headed by the sage Shaunaka assembled to perform a great 1,000-year sacrifice for the satisfaction of Lord and his devotees. One day, after finishing their morning duties by burning a sacrificial fire and offering a seed of esteem to Srila Sutta Goswami, the great sages made inquiries with great respect about the following matters. The sages said, "Respected Sutta Goswami, you are completely free from all vice. You are all well versed in all the scriptures famous for religious life, and in all the scriptures, for you have gone through them under proper guidance, and have also explained them. Being the eldest learned Vedantas, O Sutta Goswami, you are acquainted with the knowledge of Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Godhead. And you also know other sages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge. And because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore, you can tell us all you have scientifically learned from me. Please, therefore, being blessed with many years, explain to us in an easily understandable way what you have ascertained to be the absolute and ultimate good for the people in general. O learned one, in this iron age of Kali, men almost always have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. There are many varieties of scriptures, and in all of them there are many prescribed duties, which can be learned only after many years of study and their various divisions. Therefore, O sage, please select the essence of all these scriptures and explain it for the good of all living beings, that by such instruction their hearts may be fully satisfied. All blessings upon you, O Sutta Goswami. You know for what purpose the personality of God appeared in the womb of Devaki as a son of Vasudeva. O Sutta Goswami, we are eager to learn about the personality of Godhead and his incarnations. Please explain to us those teachings imparted by previous masters, acharyas, for one is uplifted both by speaking them and by hearing them. Living beings who are entangled in the complicated meshes of birth and death can be freed immediately by even unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by fear personified. O Sutta, those great sages who have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord can at once sanctify those who come in touch with them, whereas the waters of the Ganges can sanctify only after prolonged use. Who is there, delivering from vices the age of quarrel, who is not willing to hear the virtuous glories of the Lord? His transcendental acts are magnificent and gracious, and great learned sages like Narada sing of them. Please therefore speak to us who are eager to hear about the adventures he performs in his various incarnations. O wise Sutta, please narrate to us the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Godhead's multi-incarnations, such auspicious adventures and pastimes of the Lord, the Supreme Controller, are performed by his internal powers. We never tire of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is glorified by hymns and prayers. Those who have developed a taste for transcendental relationships with him relish hearing of his pastimes at every moment. Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, along with Balaram, played like a human being, and so masked he performed many superhuman acts. Knowing well that the age of Kali has already begun, we are assembled here in this holy place to hear at great length the transcendental message of Godhead, and in this way perform sacrifice. We think we have met your goodness by the will of Providence, just so that we may accept you as captain of the ship for those who desire to cross the difficult ocean of Kali, which deteriorates all the good qualities of a human being. So Sri Krishna, the Absolute Truth, master of all mystic powers, has departed for his own abode. Please tell us to whom the religious principles have now gone for shelter. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Bhagavatam class.
Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janna Ballabha Jaya Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janna Ballabha Jaya Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जना शलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मायां ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम् Vandeham Sri Guru Sriyuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raguna Tambitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Caitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nitai Namine Che Namirhate Shadhamulye Nam Dite Chere Nitai Namine Che Namirhate Shadhamulye Nam Dite Chere Jaya Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasa Tato Jayam Udiraye. Shastasar Prada, would you please bring me the 5th canto, the verse Parabhavastava Bodha Jato. I think it's chapter 5, text number 3 or 4. So this verse today is spoken by Sri Rishabhadeva to his sons. How many sons? 100 only. And these instructions are helpful in that they teach us to be aware of attachment that is binding and attachment that is liberating. And this is the essence of the process of Krishna consciousness, is to recognize the positive side to raga, which I'll say a few words, I hope, about which I should have said. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Vita raga bhaya krodha manmaya mamupashrita bahuvo jnana tapasa putamad bhavam agataha. First of all, he says, don't worry, you can do this. Many people have done it before you. And what is it that he advises us to do? And that is to overcome 3 psychological conditions which block our happiness. And those 3 are raga, bhaya, and krodha. Raga, I'll give a definition for. Yes. Any feeling or passion, especially love, affection or sympathy for, vehement desire of, interest or joy or delight in. From Dhatu, Ranj. 1, to be dyed, that's D-Y-E-D, or colored. 2, to be attached or devoted to be enamored of. 3, to cherish, and to hold something dear. These are definitions of raga. So what's wrong with that? Why would one have to give that up? Well, the answer is that we don't. But it has to be well placed, otherwise we'll be disappointed. And in today's verse, which we find at Bhagavatam 5:5:5, easy to remember, and which we'll see on the screen in about 13 seconds is my prediction for today. 5:5:5. We hear from Rishabhadev, well, beyond my expectations. All say, and please repeat, Parabhavasthavada bodhajato Yavanna jignasata atmatattvam Yavat kriyastavadidam manovai Karmatmakam yena sharira bandha. This is a Yavat Tavat verse. If this, then that. Yavat Tavat. There's a lot of Yavat Tavat verses like, here's what you get for doing that. And the word for word, Parabhava, defeat misery. Tavat, so long. Abodhajata, produced from ignorance. Yavat, as long as. Na, not. Jignasate, inquires about. Atma tattvam, the truth of the self. Yavat, as long as. Kriya, fruit of activities. Tavat, so long. Idam, this. Mana, mind. Vai, indeed. Karmatmakam, absorbed in material activities. Yena, by which. Sharira bandha, bondage in this material body. Translation. As long as one does not inquire about the spiritual values of life, one is defeated and subjected to miseries arising from ignorance. Be it sinful or pious, karma has its resultant actions. If a person is engaged in any kind of karma, his mind is called karmatmaka, colored with fruit of activity. As long as the mind is impure, consciousness is unclear, and as long as one is absorbed in fruit of activity, he has to accept a material body. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Generally, people think that one should act very piously in order to be relieved from misery, but this is not a fact. Even though one engages in pious activity and speculation, he is nonetheless defeated. His only aim should be emancipation from the clutches of Maya and all material activities. Speculative knowledge and pious activity do not solve the problems of material life. One should be inquisitive to understand his spiritual position, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 4:37. Yatai damsi samiknognir vasmasat kurate Arjuna gyanagni sarvakarmani basmasat kurate tata. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. Unless one understands the self and its activities, one has to be considered in material bondage. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10.2.32, it is also stated, Yene ravindakshava muktamaninas tvayastabhavadavashudha buddhaya. A person who doesn't have knowledge of devotional service may think himself liberated, but actually he is not. Aruya krishtrena parampadam tata patantyato nadrita yushmadangraya. Such people may approach the impersonal Brahman effulgence, but they fall down again into material activities, into material enjoyment, because they have no knowledge of devotional service. As long as one is interested in karma and jnana, he continues enduring the miseries of material life. Birth, old age, disease, and death. Karmis certainly take on one body after another. As far as jnanis are concerned, unless they are promoted to the topmost understanding, they must return to the material world. As explained in Bhagavad Gita 7:19, Bahunam jamanamante jnanavan mam prapadyate Vasudeva. The point is to know Krishna, Vasudeva, as everything and surrender unto him. Karmis do not know this, but a devotee who is 100% engaged in the devotional service of the Lord knows fully what is karma and jnana. Therefore, a pure devotee is no longer interested in karma or jnana. Anya bilashita shunyam jnana karma jnanavritam. The real bhakta is untouched by any tinge of karma and jnana. His only purpose in life is to serve the Lord. Parabhavas tavad abodhajato yavanna jignasata atmatattvam. So, in this verse, this word, karmatmakam, Prabhupada translates as absorbed in material activities, and in the translation, he clarifies that more by saying colored with fruit of activity. So raga, it's like a coloring, a coloration of the consciousness. And when that coloration comes from the material world, the three modes of material nature, then we are subjected to the threefold miseries, because the energies of the spiritual world, which are described as Sandini, Ladini, and Samvit, get translated. Something's lost in translation when it comes into the material world, and it becomes the opposite. This means that those three energies of the spiritual world, which give spiritual form, which inform one, and which also are the source of all happiness, in the material world comes as sattva, rajas, and tamas. And the combination of these, any combination or permutation of these, or the tinge of these in the material world, causes the distress of the living entity. Although it appears to be the same thing as the spiritual world, the result is the opposite. By engaging in devotional service, by which one is in the spiritual energy, in the internal energy of the Lord, then one feels happiness. When that same activity and the same attachment is connected to the three modes of material nature, then you get hlada tapatraya, the threefold miseries in the material world. You get just the opposite. So the raga, which Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita, where he says vita raga. Vita means you have to give it up. So that means that one has to purify one's desire. And there's a few ideas about that. We get examples in the Srimad Bhagavatam about the result of being affectionate to the material world. Now, there's nothing more adorable on the earth planet than a baby deer. Let's just go ahead and admit that. That's why it's so popular on the internet. Oh, there's a baby deer. How about a little kitten playing with a baby deer? Or have a little child playing with a baby deer? What could be more adorable? Well, it's definitely got some appeal to it. But for Bharat Maharaj, who is focusing on his affection for the Supreme Personality of Godhead and practicing devotional service, it became a distraction. He saw a little baby deer, and then he gave in to this affection for it, and made that his main focus in life. And the result was that his consciousness was karmatmakam. It was colored with this affection for a deer. What is a deer, after all? It's a little robot. It's a soul in a robotic body of a deer that is made to prance around and has little spots on its back and so forth. And it's a form in the material world. All the forms in this world are reflections of the forms in the spiritual world. And again, as a reminder and a spoiler alert, attraction to the forms of the material world leads to a kind of entanglement, even though they may appear to be worthy of our affection. So Bharat Maharaj focused on the deer. He gave full-blown attention to the deer and gave all his affection, so much so, and the Srimad Bhagavatam gives this in dramatic detail of how attached he was, that he was singing songs about the deer, he was looking at the moon and thinking about how the little spots on the moon were the lotus footprints of the deer. And the Bhagavatam allows us to see ourselves and how much we absorb ourselves in the material world. After all, everyone who doesn't have knowledge of one's actual self and one's actual self-interest, which is one of the points that Rishabhadeva is making in a very stern way to his son. This whole chapter is very stern. So if you want to sober up one day and be serious, read this chapter. If not, just watch TV. He informs us that he's saying that a little bit of this affection can draw one into the full-blown affection of the material world. And so people sing songs, I love you, and want to hold your hand. Big hit, 1965, 6, and so forth. The hit list goes on and on and on from a time immemorial. Everyone's singing about their love for and devotion to somebody here in the material world. In one way, it's quite natural, because this is the nature of the self, is to love. Caitanya Mahaprabhu didn't teach anything impractical, but he showed us that actually we want to love. We are by nature loving, and we are by nature attached. Now it's just a question of where you're going to be attached, and to distinguish the material world from the spiritual world. Anyarevahur sambhavad, anyarahur sambhavad. Iti shushumadhiranam, enastad vichachakshare. There's a difference in the result. So Bharat Maharaj was forced by material nature, because of affection for a deer, to take birth as a deer. Fortunately, he got the wherewithal to remember the predicament that he was in, that he got himself into by falling in love with a little deer. And then he got a chance in his next life to be a fully sober devotee. Imagine the attitude he had. Don't you have to imagine, you can read about it, but can you imagine having such an attitude that no more, that's it. I don't care who it is, I don't care who says what, to whom, I'm not signing up for it. That was Jud Bharat when he came out. In fact, his father tried to teach him Brahminical principles, how to wash his hands after going to the bathroom, and then he'd wash his hands beforehand. He'd do everything opposite, just so people would leave him alone. And so this is a kind of a stoic response to seeing the stark reality of the material world, that if my affection for matter has drawn me in yet again to a situation that's entangled me and has made a fool of me as a soul. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is mentioned by Karabhajana Muni in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which he says that when one is able to worship the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then one gets free from the embarrassment of material life, the embarrassment of being tricked into having affection for material forms. So now, a disclaimer. This does not mean that the practitioners who follow Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu are unfeeling. Quite the opposite. They develop full-blown feeling and affection for everyone. However, their affection is well placed, because they start with the vision that actually, I'm a spiritual being, I'm not this material body. And they see all others as spiritual beings within material bodies, and therefore, whatever they do for themselves and for others is well placed. It's not misplaced affection, but their affection grows more and more for Krishna and for everything in relationship with Krishna. And Prabhupada explains how this works, how one could have universal affection. So he gives this example. He said, so when he's traveling, say you're a traveler, and he gives himself as an example, and he goes to a foreign country, and then he meets somebody from India. Immediately, the person from India would say, oh, you're from India too? He's like, yeah, I'm from India. Which town? And he's like, okay, I'm from Rajasthan. Which place in Rajasthan are you from? I'm from Jaipur. So, oh, Jaipur, I live right nearby. And immediately there's a sense of affection and connection, Prabhupada says, because we're from the same place, same origin. So if you extend that and you realize that there's an original source for everyone and everything, as we just read today, Janmadhyasa Yataha, this is one of the first points that comes out in the summary of all the Vedas called the Brahma Sutras, that yes, we all come from a common source. So imagine someone who has this type of enthusiasm as he or she moves about the world, just as much as if you meet somebody say your hometown. Where? Philadelphia? You're from Philly? Coimbatore. So Coimbatore, and you meet somebody else from Coimbatore, it doesn't matter who they are. You're from Coimbatore? I'm from Coimbatore. Hey, come over and let's have idlis. You feel an immediate sense of connection. So in a similar way, those who have developed real knowledge, that is, we all have a common source. We emanate from one supreme being, Krishna. And there's a lot of logic behind that. It makes sense if you follow back and you say, who's your father? It's like, my father's a man. And who's your father's father? He's another man. And then you keep going back and back and back. You never get to a point where it's like, my father was the sky, or something impersonal. It always comes back to a person. And if you follow back far enough, you'll find that everything emanates from a personal source. That makes a lot of sense. That we'll get into on the next psychological blockade to devotional service, which is bhaya, which is fear of our personhood. Fear of personhood. That means that we block out the personhood of God, and that means we automatically block out our personhood, because if there's no original person, then how could I be a significant person either? I'll have to resort to some other idea, and that is spontaneous combustion of material energy that just came together and just happened. I just happen to be aware right now because of the combination of matter, but that doesn't mean that I'll always be like this. This is a philosophy that's taken us down the road that leads to fear, or because of fear, we go down that road. Both lead to the same dead end. And the first point about raga has to do with aligning our attachment and our love to our source. When we do that, then we naturally have love for everything that emanates from the source. In the Bhagavad Gita, for instance, Krishna says, Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmani Gavi Hastani Shuni Chaiva Shvapakecha Pandita Samadarshina. That a person who has this true knowledge sees everyone as a kindred soul, because we all come from the same source. The external feature right now, it's not that important. Someone might be a tiger, somebody else an elephant, somebody else is living on the street, another person is living at a high-rise top floor, and all of these are simply temporary manifestations of a person's karma, whether it's good or bad. So the person who's in knowledge sees this and relates only to the universality of the other living beings and feels a connection to them. We love our finger, right? Say yes. You love your finger so much, how much will you pay to keep it? No, let's not go there. It's very morbid. Actually, we love our finger when it's attached to our hand. If finger isn't attached to our hand, we won't be that affectionate towards it. So this goes back to our connection. And because we're connected to the Supreme, therefore we have significance. When we're disconnected, and how are we disconnected? By consciousness. Ritertam yat pratyeta, na pratyeta chatmani, tad vidyad atmanomayam yatabaso yatatamaha. When we dislocate ourselves from the Supreme by forgetting about the Supreme or ignoring the Supreme, then we become separated by consciousness. And therefore we suffer by this raga, because there's no other alternative for placing our affection when we forget our source than being attached to the forms of the material world. And therefore, Krishna consciousness means to rekindle, first of all, our knowledge of our source, and then we rekindle our love for our source. And this is done through the process called Bhakti Yoga. It's not that hard because we are naturally parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're naturally lovers of the Supreme, but by dislocation we've forgotten, therefore we simply have to reconnect. And once that affection starts to come back into the heart, I didn't want to use that, come back into the heart. It didn't help. Once it's rekindled, that metaphor is okay. Prabhupada gives the example of starting a car. In the old days, kids, cars used to have these carburetors. When it would stall, you'd have to have somebody push you. And then you'd pop the clutch. There were clutches in the old days. And then the car would blah, 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 blah. It would start up again. So Prabhupada gives this example of bhakti, igniting our affection for Krishna. It's like restarting a car that's stalled. A little push in the beginning of Vidhi Bhakti, and then gradually, by pushing the momentum and then popping the clutch, then the car starts again, and there's a natural affection. It starts to flow for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These are some preliminary remarks. There may be other thoughts, but that hopefully will be helpful. But let's take a few reflections or questions from this point to try to expand the conversation a little more. Who do we have? Bhakta Roman, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances and the humble obeisances to all devotees. It's really actually this topic to the connection touched me a lot because just recently going through Bhakti Jumpstart course, yesterday I was looking at the point of Vaishnava etiquette and I found one when you practice humility, it says that when you take yourself away and put Krishna instead. And it kind of sparked to me because when you center as the material desires, when you center material needs, it's like you work in your shift, you're coming out, grab the carrot from the fridge, start chewing it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what about Krishna? I forgot to offer that carrot. It looks like now I'm committing a sin. And it's easy, shows how we connected to this material world that we forgot about Krishna. And like you realize how it's important to keep this connection by remembering Krishna. And that's one of the steps of the bhakti yoga. And it's all chain of practices that's come in your mind. Oh, my job was supposed to be more better, or I have to read more. So and that's as Srila Prabhupada said, the bhakti is really easy, but we just have to do it. We just have to remember. And that's today's point actually brought me back to that when you remember that every single time about Krishna, but not about your material needs, it's kind of bringing your spiritual practice up, and you have much more pleasure to go through your day to day in your material life when you remember Krishna, and he helps you, he pushes you up from that entanglement, and you feel much more better in that. So thank you very much for this topic. I think it's really important.
Thank you very much for bringing up the carrot. That brought to mind, although it may sound like some kind of artificial restriction, you have to offer the carrot first before you eat it. When we develop a sense of love for Krishna, offering him whatever we have, especially food, before we eat it, becomes a natural, that we develop a natural sense for that. And it reminded me of my first experiences in Krishna consciousness, reading the Bhagavad Gita. I got onto this idea of offering the food to Krishna, and I was looking for some kind of a spiritual teacher. I was at Del Valle High School in Walnut Creek, California, and I was asking around to some of the fellow students, and they said, "Oh, go to see Mr. King." Mr. King taught Spanish, and he was well known for being a Buddhist. And he also taught classes on Buddhism. Put the whole screen back on, please. I want to see who's there. And so I went to Mr. King right after the one of my classes, and I said, I'm interested in developing my spiritual life. And he said, well, why don't you come to one of my classes at my home? And I said, okay. By this time, I already read a version of the Bhagavad Gita in which Krishna recommended offering food. And perhaps I had read something about it in a BTG. But I was dedicated to that. I didn't know how to offer something, but I did have a sense that it was a nice thing to do. And I was trying to do it in my own way, albeit by offering every spoonful before I'd eat it. I'd hold it up and say a mantra, and then I'd eat it. And I'd like, take this, take that. And so I got to Mr. King's house about 10 minutes before the class would start. And he said, you're too skinny. To meditate, you're going to have to. I overcame that. He said, you're going to have to eat something. As he taught this kind of very severe practice of Zen meditation, where you have to sit there, you go around with a stick if somebody was falling asleep and smack them. And so he said, eat something. So he put a piece of toast in the toaster, and then he spread some peanut butter or something on it, and he said, here, eat this. And I started doing my mantra thing, like offering. And he said, no, don't do that. He said, just eat it. I said, no, I have to offer it. And I had this sense that, no, I should offer it first. It wasn't a very well-informed sense, but it was simple. It just made sense to me, and I liked doing it. It made me happy. And so he as the teacher and the Zen master, he said, no, you just eat, no offering. And I said, that's okay then. And I put it down and I walked out. And as I was walking out, the other students enthusiastically were walking up the driveway. They said, where are you going? I said, see you later. I didn't say much. I just left and I walked home. And as I was walking home, I was thinking, I was feeling in my heart, you did the right thing. Way to go. And it just reinforced this idea. So although it is there's this sense that we get from Shastra, you have to offer everything. Well, that was a kind of a free sample I got in the very beginning of a sense of happiness from connecting to Krishna by eating, and I also felt sort of victorious by holding to that. So we can develop that sense for everything. Everything is connected to Krishna, and we stay connected to Krishna through the activities of bhakti. They're very natural and real. It's not something artificial, just some restriction that we're following. Let's see if there's any other reflections. Yes.
I really like the analogy of the car when you said that in the olden days we needed some extra jump start to get the car started. And I was relating it to the earlier point that you said about jnana karma. We don't have bhakti is the only cause of bhakti. We don't need jnana and karma to get it. And when we do bhakti, then the knowledge and detachment automatically will come. We don't need to endeavor too much for that. So the jump start in this case is getting an association of a pure devotee, because the bhakti in their heart will come to our heart. So that's what I was thinking, to learning that, get that association which will give you bhakti.
Sure, that's a good point. Rupa Goswami says, in the beginning, a little bit of jnana may be necessary, but or austerity, he says. If you become overly consumed with austerity, then you can make your heart hard. And yes, there are many points made in the Shastra, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita, Janaya Yashuvairagyam Jnanam Cha Yadahaitukam. By performing acts of bhakti, then one naturally gets knowledge and detachment. And even the Vaishnava poets mentioned that by doing bhakti, then liberation and the other rewards of life, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, they stand outside as servants. Anything we can do to help for those who are dedicated to bhakti? Yes. Vrindavan.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I was thinking about the point that there are so many now movements and methods how to love other people, how to treat them nicely, how to save animals, different species of animals. So, but it's all that artificial. And if people wouldn't know that first they have to develop love for God, for Krishna, then everything else, anything else wouldn't work properly unless it's aligned. That's why it's not successful. They promise you that when you go through this course, you will know how to treat people nicely, how to love them, how to care of them, but it doesn't work. So far nobody wasn't that successful in this. Everybody just promising, but you have to put that on first.
So we should analyze why that may not be completely effective. Because there may be, now I'm starting to answer the question to the best of my ability, there may be a point at which the universality of our connection to them breaks down. We may be able to appreciate a certain class of people, or just a certain species, and then I may exclude other species. Unless I have this sense of the source and the origin and love for the source. As Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, Aham sarvasya pravavo matak sarvam pravartate. In this verse he's talking about this. He's saying when you have this awareness that everything flows from me, then you develop this sense of devotion and love to me. And when you know that everything, everyone, every element, every aspect of the world, all the aspects of nature, for instance, in the Gita, Krishna says, Ye chaiva satvika bhava rajasas tamasasjaye mata iveti tanvidi natvaham teshu te mayi. That whatever kinds of manifestations you see in this world of goodness, passion, or ignorance, these are coming from me. And he says, I'm not affected by them because they're emanations from me. They're my external energy. So having this very broad vision allows us to appreciate people in a truly non-sectarian way, just to see that actually they're parts and parcel of Krishna. Other sorts of development of affection or love for people breaks down at some particular point because of the limitations of the bodily conception of life. 1, 2.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I was just thinking that recently many of us saw one of our god sisters, Naina Sundari Mataji, passing away on Zoom. It was live.
I didn't quite hear that. Sorry.
Naina Sundari Mataji is one of our god sisters who lives in Michigan.
Yes.
And she just recently passed away. And while she was passing away, Guru Maharaj was on the call almost 2 hours. And we all got to, watch the whole thing. It was amazing that because you were just mentioning about how Rishabhadev was so stern and he's telling his children, after I've never seen anything like that in my life. Of course, I've seen the final lesson of Srila Prabhupada, but it was amazing how she was thanking everybody. And she has 2 little kids who are standing on the back of the thing, so she couldn't see. Her husband was also there. We could see it. And I was just thinking that everybody who was around her, making sure that she was actually focusing on the mantra. And Maharaj was saying that Krishna is waiting for you. And, after that also he said Prabhupada has taken her back. But the whole process was such an eye-opener. I was just thinking that, I personally do so many things. But then where that moment is what I have to get ready for. So like it was so like on the face. So I was just thinking that, as you were saying, I was just remembering that.
Yeah, it's one of the most edifying experiences is being with somebody when he or she is leaving the body. My first experience of seeing somebody, I was in Vrindavan many years ago, and a devotee had passed away that night, and the next morning the devotees all took her on a palanquin around Vrindavan and then to the Jamuna for burning. And then when the fire started, I was thinking, wait a minute, you can't do that. Because there's such a sense of the body. And when we see the body being burned, there's this sense of awareness. Ram Nam Satya Hai, that everything that we heard about Krishna consciousness is true, and the body's very temporary. Without practice, this becomes smashana vairagya, which is a thing, which means that during the time when I see a body being burned to ashes, that I become very detached for a few days. And then there's a sense of going back to my normal conditioning in the material world. So this spiritual strength, development of Krishna consciousness based on the principle of the Bhagavatam, which is Ante Narayana Smriti, being able to have the strength to remember Narayana at the time of death, and keeping that in perspective as we go through the different phases of our life. It doesn't mean you have to skip any particular phase, but it means that you have to have awareness as you're going through the different phases of your life, that I'm not actually a member of the material world, so to speak. I am ultimately a spiritual being. Okay, who is next? Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So why does the fear of personhood of God exist in people?
That's such a nice question. So one of the points that Prabhupada mentions in the Bhagavad Gita is that when I have exchanges in the material world based on my personhood, the temporality, the temporality of the situation leads to disappointment, because as I'm relating to other people in this world, and then one way or another the relationship is broken, that it becomes a source of unhappiness. And I can develop a callousness then towards the personal conception of life because there's a sense of pain associated with it. Even my own personhood, says Patanjali Muni in the Yoga Sutras, the samskar that I keep most is the one where I keep losing my identity. My personhood in the material world, sociologically, it's described how we develop roles. When we're born into a particular family, we learn by association what our role is. And our role in a particular family, for instance, you're a daughter, or you're a son, or you're, in school you have a particular nickname and people attribute certain qualities to you, that becomes you. And you socialize in the family that these are my 52 cousins, these are my roles that I'm involved with, and that becomes our main identity. However, that identity can't be sustained. It is unceremoniously changed. And so my sense of personhood, when it's obscured by the conception that I'm this body and I am a particular role that I'm playing, and it gets changed again and again, becomes frustrating. And I fear the idea of losing that identity again and again. And so Prabhupada gives the example, if you have a diseased finger, and then you go to a doctor and the doctor says, well, we can just chop it off. Then you won't have it anymore. This is an amputation. Or you can we can try to cure it. So we might also think about just chopping off our existence altogether because it's so painful. There was a foreign student staying at Satyadev Prabhu's house many years ago, and she was from Japan, and we had some conversations with her, and she was fully convicted that her path in life was to annihilate her existence. Not talking about committing suicide materially, but her goal, so-called spiritual goal, was to become nothing, that she didn't want to exist anymore. So Prabhupada mentions that in his purport, that this can become the result of the frustration of our misaligned personhood in this world, is to think, let me then become nothing. And there are philosophies that accommodate this. There's Mayavad, which doesn't acknowledge an actual personhood that is individual. The idea of individuality in Mayavad philosophy, which is pervasive. Everywhere you go, people teach Mayavad philosophy. It's very rare to have a personal philosophy. God is a person. They'll say, yeah, he's a person for now, but as soon as we merge, then that's different. This is the idea of Mayavad. For now, it's convenient. We see some forms, but these are all illusory. Even the form of God is illusory. And therefore, you have to think of somebody. So we'll start there, and then we'll become nothing. That's their ultimate goal. And there are certain forms of Buddhism also that describe the individual consciousness as a product of a process that happens as the material nature is interacting with itself. And then there's a sense of personhood. But that's only a process. It's not that you're really a person. Caitanya Mahaprabhu teaches that we're actually chitkana. We're a particle of consciousness, like a spark from a fire. And that is eternal. That's what Krishna teaches in the Bhagavad Gita also, where he says, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, so that the sense of personhood is eternal. Not the sense, the personhood. The person that we are is eternal. In the 12th verse of the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says that to Arjuna, all these kings, they're people. They've been people in the past, they're people now, they'll be people in the future, even if they die. So will you, Arjuna. So this establishment of personhood proper, that is, that we really are persons, we are sparks of the Supreme that are indistinguishable, that they're indivisible. They always exist. We always exist. We always will exist. This is rare. And that's because of a fear of our personal existence. And also that's based on a lack of what to do with our personhood. Because the only option really available to one, minus the philosophy of Caitanya Mahaprabhu about the existence of a spiritual world and this raga or attachment in love to Krishna and all of Krishna's parts and parcels, is to love the material world. And it doesn't take a lot of intelligence to figure out that that's misguided. I mean, as I said earlier, it's in a lot of songs. People realize they sing the blues. You get country music that, my baby ran away, took the pickup truck and the dog too. Now here I am, left me the mule to ride. And, that's all that's left. So this sense of disappointment in the material world is palpable. So what Caitanya Mahaprabhu does from the very beginning, when he's asked by Sanatana Goswami, who am I? He tells him, you're a person. What kind of person are you? You're part and parcel of Krishna, and you're his eternal servant. Now, of course, there's only one person who doesn't like to hear that, and that's the conditioned soul. Everyone else loves that. Advaita Acharya, he's Mahavishnu. It's like, no, I want to be a servant. Balaram, no, I'm a servant. Every spiritual entity is thinking, I just want to serve Krishna. It's the highest compliment to say you're a das or a dasi. But the conditioned souls, no thanks. I'm independent. And this has gone down the wrong cul-de-sac. So Caitanya Mahaprabhu comes to rescue us from that sense of lost personhood and brings us back into this process where he says, no, you have a loving relationship with the Supreme, and that it's overwhelmingly beautiful and satisfying, and it's the right thing. And it can be developed by the process of bhakti, of chanting Hare Krishna and hearing about the relationships that other liberated souls have with Krishna. And when we have that sense and we start to develop it, then we feel completely fulfilled, and we're able to be well adjusted even in the material world. What do you think?
Thank you, Maharaj. So it's basically the fear of personal relations.
Yeah, I could have said it in one sentence, I know. I mean, there may be other points to it, which I'll bring out later. Prabhus? 1, 2, 3.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for the class, and I'm really excited to be here in person, because for the first time I'm actually seeing all the devotees and actually attending the class in person. It's always over YouTube that I've been attending your classes, so I'm very grateful for this.
From where were you attending?
I was in LA, Los Angeles.
In LA? Yes. Well, let's welcome him. Is this a holiday visit, or do we get to keep you?
So I actually recently just shifted up to San Francisco.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. So my the main question that I had was, I really loved the verse that you quoted on Pandita Samadarshinaha, and I also remember always the picture, the illustration in the Gita where this learned person is seeing the Paramatma in all living entities. So my question is, this is something that I would love to aspire for, to see everyone equally and to potentially see the Paramatma in everyone. Is this at my current stage, if I see the Paramatma, or how do I get to that particular stage of seeing the Paramatma in everyone, and how would it translate to treating them So I remember reading in one of Prabhupada's purports that he says, although the learned person sees a tiger equally, as he sees the spirit soul and the Paramatma, and he doesn't go and embrace it. So the same way, I'm curious, how do we translate our feeling of seeing Paramatma and seeing everyone equally into an expression of treating them and treating any entity?
Well, what a nice question. Thank you. There's a progressive way in which to realize the presence of Paramatma and to see all living beings as spiritual sparks. This is anupashyati. Anupashyati means you should follow what the scriptures say to do. Don't artificially try to do it. And don't imitate. I'm not saying you would. I'm just saying what Prabhupada mentions in the Sri Upanishad as a starter. He says, don't imitate those who truly have this vision of the soul in every body. Even those who do have that vision are not impractical. For instance, the verse mentions does it mention a tiger? Vidya Vinaya Sampani Brahmane Gavi, a Gavi, Hastini, an elephant, Shuni, Chaiva, like a dog eater, Chaiva, Shopake Cha, a dog cooker, Shopake Cha, Pandita Sambadarshina. If you see the universality of all living beings, it doesn't mean that artificially then you would embrace, as an example, the tiger. Probably gives that example. So because it also comes along with the common sense that this is a soul that is overwhelmed by a particular body, and if you try to interact with the tiger, he may eat you. So you'll appreciate, but there's a practical way in order to do that. Taking a step back further, the Shastra says, Ishvare taradineshu balisheshu dusatsucha prema maitri kripopeksha yakaroti samadhyamaha. That a middle class devotee, the first one I mentioned is the first class devotee, sees everyone in relationship to Krishna, everyone and everything in relationship to Krishna. Second class devotee makes distinctions. What are the distinctions? First, there is God, and I'm not him. And then sees that there are devotees, and tries to make appropriate friendships with devotees. And that's mentioned also in the 5th verse of the Shri Upadeshamrita, that Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta. There's different levels of devotees, and our relationship with them is according to their position at that time. I could go into that more, but I'll just leave it at that for now. Appropriate friendships with devotees, and then there's the innocent, which means people who are open to hearing about Krishna. We were in the Delhi airport. I brought a bunch of books, and before we got on the plane, there was some guy sitting there in the waiting lounge. Before we got on the plane, he looked at us because we had tilak and neck beads and everything, and he looked at us, and I was handing books to a lot of people, so I handed him a book. He didn't even say anything; he just opened it and started reading it. I came back an hour later, and he was still reading it. And I thought he was just waiting for that, actually. So people are open, they're innocent, you look for those. And then you also notice that there are persons who are averse. Means they're against God, they're against Krishna consciousness, and they're not interested. So you're supposed to avoid them, and it means really don't agitate them more, because it just aggravates them. You don't poke them and get them all riled up. You're supposed to stay back a little bit. And Jiva Goswami says, it's not that we don't care. He says you should offer a prayer for them and pray for the wherewithal to think of a way that you could actually help them. And for those who are innocent, he says, you're supposed to pour in as much mercy as possible. This is the preoccupation of the Madhyama Adhikari. On a very practical level, taking time out of one's busy schedule to go door to door, to meet people, and to offer them Krishna conscious literature is a really good way of realizing the Paramatma. First of all, you see how the 3 modes of material nature work. It's very practical. Narada did it when he was a little child. He went and looked at the Lord's creation and saw how the energies were working. This is one of the ways that we become acquainted with the world, and we are able to see the Bhagavad Gita in action. We read about the modalities, and then we go door to door. And we just, as soon as somebody opens the door, then you go, okay, that's passion and ignorance. Yeah, 62% ignorance, and you can see the passion mixed in. And hey, they got an apple on the shelf. There's a 1% goodness. Whatever it may be, one can start to see the world through the eyes of the Bhagavad Gita by going door to door. You also see miraculously how the supersoul works within the heart. You go there with an intention to offer somebody something. Like we're door to door in Toronto. Who was I with? We were at somebody's door, and the man inside was deliberately ignoring us. That's another good experience to have. When somebody deliberately ignores you. He was watching television, and obviously we were demonstratively at his door, and his wife came over to talk to us, and she kept looking back at him because she wanted his consent to stay engaged with us, and he wouldn't look up. So that felt great. And then of course, things changed as we kept talking. In fact, I remember now that we said that we wouldn't leave. And we got on our knees and we said, we're just beggars and we're not leaving until you take a look at this. And then he kind of got engaged and he came over. And near the end, he became the champion of our cause. Everything just turned around. You have to have these experiences to watch how the material energy is working, how the spiritual energy works, how there's an interaction with the super soul within the heart and the individual soul deciding to or not to take the Krishna consciousness. This we all get to see on a big jumbotron when we go out and actually teach Krishna consciousness to others. We move about the world in that way. We learn practically how it all works. That's why we go out, is to learn these things. It solidifies the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. We get to see it for ourselves, and we can work within the parameters of this Ishvare Taradineshu Balisheshu tu Satsucha. We can be guided by that as we interact with people. And then gradually, we get glimpses of the universality of all souls, no matter what condition they're in. We see it through the eyes of Scripture, Anupashyati. So go door to door, and offer people Krishna consciousness. And when you do that, then you'll get that vision more and more. Okay, we'll take a couple more. Let's see. We're looking online. We're looking to the audience. Oh, almost had your hand up. Okay, it was close. Okay, yes. Oh, Prabhu, please. Hare Krishna.
It's a wonderful feeling to be in the midst of this great group of people, devotees, and you. I have one question, and that question is: we are all born in a family. We have, naturally, we are attached to our family, father, mother, sister. How can we try and detach ourselves, keeping our responsibilities towards them, and as a family intact, without getting conditioned? From the fruitive part of whatever karma we do.
Okay, well, I'll read you what Rishabhadev says in the 3rd verse. He answers that question, actually. And it goes as follows. Those who are interested in reviving Krishna consciousness and increasing their love of Godhead do not like to do anything that is not related to Krishna. They're not interested in mingling with people who are busy maintaining their bodies, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They're not attached to their homes, although they may be householders, nor are they attached to wives, children, friends, or wealth. At the same time, they are not indifferent to the execution of their duties. Such people are interested in collecting only enough money to keep the body and soul together. So, first of all, it's quite natural to be connected to a family. We all come from a family. And it's quite unnatural to ignore your family. Unless you really do have a superior engagement somewhere, and that is that, let's say you've become a brahmachari and you're fully engaged 24 hours a day somewhere, in which case it's still a good idea to stay in touch with your family. I have personal experience because I kind of needed the thrust to get out of the material world. So, and plus I was such a neophyte that I, very artificially walked away from my family and didn't come back for a long time. I felt like I kind of needed it in order to distinguish myself. It all worked out okay in the end, actually. But I know the experience of sort of just cutting people off, and I also have the experience of then interacting with my family in a very loving way after I'd been in the Krishna consciousness movement for some time. I mean, both were necessary, but I did have a better excuse in the beginning, which was that I was a brahmachari. And I remember when I first joined the temple and my father came to see me, and I hid because I thought that was advanced. And then our temple president said, "You did what? You hid?" He severely chastised me. He said, "This is not Krishna conscious." And he said, "Prabhupada never taught that. He said you should come and offer your respects to your parents and so forth." And so, yeah, there can be easily a misapplication of this idea of renunciation, that I'll just ignore my family or their Maya or this or that. Better is to have a sense of that we have a dual existence. We're devotees, and of course, if everyone in your family is a devotee, then the cooperation is much more readily available. If not, then we also have to be sensitive that the people around us, there are family members, they won't respond well to cold indifference. And it's psychologically necessary. And I hate to put it in clinical terms, but I mean, first I'll start with that. It's necessary for those people in the family to feel that we care for them and that we love them. And so Bhagavatam, Narada Muni talking to Yudhishthira says we should fulfill that. That's what he's saying, we should do our duty also and be there for everybody. Even if your main goal in life is to become spiritual, you should still emotionally be available to everyone. And as one goes through the different phases of life and applies Krishna consciousness for oneself, even if everybody else in the family isn't up to speed, if one maintains one's practice, then gradually people become aware of the benefits of Krishna consciousness. If you're making advancement, you'll develop good qualities and they'll become attracted to them. This is probably one I could have answered in one sentence also, right? So we shouldn't do anything artificially, because anything done artificially doesn't give the result that we're looking for. When there is, at particular times in our life, when we have affection for our significant others, we can embrace that, even as we go on with our Krishna consciousness. Because it's, first of all, it's quite natural to do so, and second of all, as we perform our Krishna conscious practices throughout our lives, everything comes out in the wash, and it will be naturally rendered, and everything will be in its right place. Nirkula, what do you have to say about this? I mean, we've been through a lot together because, she met me when I was a brahmachari, transitioning into Grihastha ashram, and also, yes. What do you think?
I did. We both have either had or have loving relationships with our families, between ourselves. And as you mature in Krishna consciousness, it's just a natural thing that happens. You maintain your Krishna consciousness, and at the same time, you're able to have affection and love for your family, your friends, and even extended beyond that.
Anything more? Okay. I don't know if I gave you a practical answer or not. You have to love your family, and if you don't, then it creates a void that is unsatisfactory, and it's really hard to, we should have natural relationships with those people in the world that we're born into. At the same time, we should maintain our perspective of being Krishna conscious. We have a dual existence. We're spiritual beings, but we're in a material world. So you can't artificially be renounced in the world, but you can apply Krishna consciousness in all circumstances through loving exchanges and through your own personal example. And gradually, naturally, those kinds of relationships will become mature, which means that, I'm trying to think of it, in my own practical, in my case, the first Utsahan Mayi, this is a natural reaction to first taking to Krishna consciousness, is that, okay, that's it, I'm liberated, I'm a pure devotee. And when I read a few of the letters that I wrote to my parents when I first joined the temple, I shudder a little bit. They're obviously condescending to those who raised me and gave me, kept me protected throughout my life. At the same time, they were ignorant of Krishna consciousness, and gradually, as I rekindled my relationship with them, I was thinking, I didn't actually know them that well. I was born when they were 40, so I missed 40 years to start with. And the next, 16, before I joined Krishna consciousness, I didn't really ask that much about them either. How much does a 15 or 16-year-old ask about, what's your history? They're more interested in what they're doing at that time. So I went back later and found out more about them and put everything in place. And they also appreciated more as time went by, especially, watching that Krishna consciousness has this practical aspect. And I was just watching yesterday some of the devotees in Australia. They were talking about how they had joined Krishna consciousness in a rather abrupt way, and their parents were alarmed. But gradually over time, they reconciled in a very sweet way because they saw that it's something very practical and integratable into the world. Oh, geez. Okay, Priya Kishori. I said, oh, geez, because I wasn't sure if I actually answered your question. Oh, yeah. Okay. Priya and then Hari. Go ahead.
One of the points that was really deep that you made, I really liked was as we're changing bodies, we have this samskara and deep pain of losing our identity over and over again. And I was thinking about how in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says we change bodies as though as though we change clothes. And I was thinking that by practicing Krishna consciousness, we're coming to understand our true identity, our deeper identity through all of those changes. And it'll naturally allow us to overcome that pain that we've been feeling for so many lifetimes. And another point I liked was raga, bhaya, krodha. These three are so broad yet deep and encompass all the psychological conditions that we go through, because anxiety, worry, so many different things we encompass actually come from these three origins. And I love how by looking at our problems through this lens, we can understand where they deeply emanate from.
Yeah, thank you, Prikishori. That was really reassuring.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So one thing I remembered from this talk was how in a previous class you mentioned that people, you can think of them on a number line, and people tend to be on the negative scale first, like against God or spirituality. Eventually they might reach 0, which is like impersonalism or losing the personhood. And then we're trying to be in the positive scale. And that realization made me question, like, in our preaching or book distribution, whenever we meet people who might be at 0 or trying to lose the personhood, but they seem like they have good Vaishnav qualities and like your heart naturally wants to help them. What can we do as devotees to help those people other than just avoid them because they're Mayavadis or whatever?
I think part of the answer was in what you were describing, is how you befriend somebody. When our first, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says, before you see Krishna, you see the Vaishnavas. And he compares it to the sun. First, you see the sun rays like the sun rise, meaning that you see light. You don't see the sun come up, actually. So first, you see the sun rise, then you see the sun. First, you see the Vaishnavas, then you see Krishna. He said, if you're seeing Vaishnavas, means you're going to see Krishna next. And the ways are to show that one actually cares. The caring of the material world is oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes it's tinged with a sense of what are you going to do for me? When somebody feels a sense of coming from someone that there's unconditional love, that I'm doing it for you because either it's my duty or because I actually care about you, then it's heart-touching. That's part of the experience in the material world, that everybody wants something from me. There's an exploitative environment in the material world. I like you because you're going to do something for me. Somebody who actually has this sense of universality, like people in a family. For the family, I'll do anything because then we're all from the same origin, right? So they have that sense. And brothers, sisters know, like, oh, this person, of course, not always, right? But it's possible that there's this sense somebody has, like, we're in the same family, we're blood, therefore I'm going to take care of you. And we just know they have our best interest in mind. So when somebody actually has this sense of Krishna consciousness, and people feel it, that we're there for them, and not trying to take something from them, but we're trying to offer whatever we can that we've received, then they'll feel it. I mentioned perhaps before, but it's worth putting in this slot that one of my godbrothers was teaching Krishna consciousness in another state, and this professor got really interested in what he was saying. I forget how she got connected, but she came and was listening more and more to his teachings of Krishna consciousness. And she was a high-placed person and from an aristocratic family, and also not Indian, and not oriented towards Vedic culture at all. So when her family found out that she was visiting the Hare Krishna, they became alarmed, and they warned her that, you're dabbling in a cult, and so forth. And especially this woman's daughters were against it. And then this woman was taking some cooking classes, and one of the homes of the devotees that lived there. And she needed a ride home, so her daughters came to pick her up. And when they knocked on the door, the devotee women who came to the door invited them in. They said, no, we're just here to pick up. Oh, well, she's right in the middle of cooking. Please come in. And the devotees who invited them in were so warm and loving. Their mood was so accommodating that these were the daughters of the woman. Their hearts changed. And they suddenly realized, after one meeting, when they left that place, that this is what these people are like? They were so nice. And they felt then afterwards that this can't be bad because of the hearts of the people. So everyone responds to the sense of loving kindness that comes from the heart. Not everyone, but that's what's most likely to change somebody's heart, is just to be there for them. Okay, there was one last one. No, there was something. Yes, Prabhu, you make the last comment, and then I'll make my closing remarks.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
So at times there's a lot of things that come to your mind, and then you kind of sort of feel that it's you, right? And after a certain point, you realize, oh, it's not. It's my mind that's telling me a lot of negative things, right? How can we make this permanent, or maybe more often that we realize that it's not my mind, it's my mind, it's not me, and it's becoming all negative and turning me towards things that I don't want to do, and I'm not that kind of person. So how is it possible to make it more often or permanent, maybe?
Yes, which is an important question, because it's natural that the mind will be active. So Krishna mentions this in the Bhagavad Gita. He gives a series of responses to Arjuna, who asks a similar question, which he put in a different way. Arjuna asked, how can I tell when somebody, or how can I tell when I am self-realized? What's the state of consciousness? And the first thing that Krishna says is, Prajahati yadakaman sarvan partamanogatan atman yevatmana tushta stita pragnas tadochite. That is that you become aware of the fact that you're separate from the myriad thoughts that are coming through your mind. And later in the Bhagavatam, in the 11th canto, the incarnation of Krishna, known as Hamsa, says that devotees naturally, by forming Krishna consciousness, develop a sense of what's called shikshit, or a state of shakshitva, which means of witnesshood. They become aware that there's this process going on in their minds. Like, have you ever noticed any chatter in your mind? When I played Little League, they used to tell us to make a lot of chatter, because they'd say, okay, let's hear some chatter out there. And you go, hey, batta, 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 swing, batta. They made that illegal because it made people swing. They said, you can't say that anymore. Swing. And they, but we had to say, come on, man, come on, Larry, you got him. This guy's a whiffer. You know, so chatter, it's just, what is chatter? It's like, hey, come on, batta, 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 batta. You know, there's that going on in the mind. There's a level of the mind that is described also in the Bhagavatam that's always chattering. It's this combination of everything you've heard and seen, and it's just going around and around. And one who becomes elevated rises above the chatter of the mind and notices that it's there, but it's not affected by it. So that's what Krishna means by prajahati yadakaman. Then he says, sarvam parta manogatan atman yevatmana tushta. And a person starts to develop a sense of satisfaction within, which really frees one from the changing conditions of the material world. I have an example of this that it was very stark realization for me. I was in Italy during the summer, and we had just gone out. It was the day before we started our meetings, and I went with a few devotees to see this big reservoir. And it was a beautiful little Italian village, wending streets that go up to the top of the hill, and then you could oversee this beautiful reservoir with birds soaring in the air. And as I was going up, I was distributing books in Italian, and just stopped a few cars on the way. And I got to the top, and there were these three people sitting on a bench looking out over it. So I offered them a book. And 2 of them spoke Italian, and 1 of them spoke German and English. And as it turned out, they were kind of interested. But the point was that they were there commiserating because they were extremely distraught, all 3 of them. 2 of them especially, because it was election time in Italy when I was there. And their party, whatever it was, I have no idea, and that's kind of the point I'm about to make, lost. And they basically felt like life as we know it is over. And so that's the condition they were in. They were lamenting so heavily that we lost the election. That was their main... And I was thinking, I didn't even know who ran. And I had this realization that actually, I don't care. I mean, I care that they're suffering. I could relate to it. But not that I didn't care about them, but I didn't care about who won or who lost because I just didn't know. It didn't affect me at all. And this shakshitva is like that. It means there's all this chatter in the mind and all these desires are going through, but the devotee feels like, yeah, I don't really care because he has a higher mission. The mission is important, that I'm going for a different goal. So that comes in the next verse. What is the next verse? How does it start? The Stita Di Muni? Somebody? First word, please. Dukeshu anuvigna manaha, sukeshu vigataspriha, vitaraga bhayakroda. There it is. Stita Di Munir Uchite. So the Stita Di Muni means a thoughtful person who has a perspective of life based on his or her mission in Krishna consciousness. It's mission-based. The person knows this is what my goal of life is. So therefore, despite the fact that there's chatter in the mind, there's chatter on the hilltop, there's chatter on the radio, there's chatter here, there, everywhere, Stita Di Muni is not affected by it, is dhira, because I'm going somewhere else. I belong to it. My goal is not this. I'm not affected by the temporary goings-on in the world because I'm going somewhere else. We have that. We can actually cherish the goal, first of all, as you mentioned, Ante Narayana Smriti, that I'm getting ready to leave my body. I mean, that's like a really big thing. In fact, when I was writing my priorities during the pandemic, I kept moving it up towards the top. And just put it at the top, sir. You know, you put it at the top and say, getting ready for leaving the body. Then everything else becomes subservient to that. And actually loving Krishna, developing my love for Krishna, even higher than that. And a Stita Di Muni has that. It's like, okay, there are all these things going on. I'll deal with them appropriately. The heat went out. I'll turn it back on. Fine. But my goal is higher. There's something more that I'm going for. So if we can inherit that sense of mission, that this is what my life is about, despite the fact that we have to move about the world, we do have to entertain family members, we do have to go through the different phases of our life and be who we are at that time, still there's this resolve that exempts us from being swept away by all the chatter and all the various duties that we may have at various times of our life. Om Tat Sat. I said I'll give final remarks. I wanted to say that we just got back from Vrindavan. Hare Krishna. Thank you. I'm quite happy about it for 2 reasons, at least 2. One is that it was very absorbing and extremely fulfilling time we had in Vrindavan, and we weren't doing anything very, sensational from a material point of view. In fact, I kept looking around saying, we're in just one room here. I didn't go much elsewhere, just stayed in one room, and I thought that I felt that we had journeyed to faraway worlds, from that one room. And it felt completely satisfied being in one room and just hearing and chanting. So that was one thing that was very nice. Also, Divyanam Prabhu had a yatra that went all over everywhere, which I usually don't like to do that much. I like to stay in one place. And he asked me to come for 4 or 5 days for the yatra, and I said yes, and I was thinking, okay, it's time away from what I like to do. But when I actually got on the yatra, and we went to different parts of Vrindavan, like we went to Varshana and Nandagram, and we went to Vrindakund, and we went to Madan Mohan and Radha Damodar temples. The impressions of going to those places are so indelible to me now, and it was such a delightful time. We didn't have to do much except go there and chant and be in the places. And I was thinking of how edifying it is to go to the Dham and just spend time there. One might have anxieties, will I really appreciate it, and so forth. But the Dham actually rewards those who take the trouble to go there by giving us these indelible impressions that we can take away and keep in our hearts forever. And the second reason that I'm so happy that we went there is coming back. Because as we drove up this morning, we had such a lovely greeting party. And then to see everybody here and to remember, because, you know, I start to think after a month or so, is it real, what we have here? And I start to think also, like, do they really want us to come back? Maybe it's better if, we don't mess things up. And so coming back and feeling the happiness of being back home is so satisfying. And I noticed somebody made some improvements around here. Who did this? Who's responsible for this? We've been talking about it for years, and while we were away, somebody sneaky put it up. Huh? Jagarini. That's nice. I saw a few other improvements too. In any case, we're really, it's so satisfying to have a home to come back to. It truly is our home, and feel really satisfied to be here. And also, just knowing that we only have a few days before we go back. But it's with many of you who are coming back, right? To Puri and Vrindavan. Puri and Mayapur. So, 2 sides to be happy about. Now we're going to have a Guru Puja. So we're going to roll up the carpet and put away the asanas, and we'll sing to our heart's content. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Vanchakalptaruscha Kripasindave Vachapatitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna. If you can direct your attention to the Jumbotron, we're going to recite the verse that begins with Namashreshtam. Namashreshtam manamapi shachi putra matra sarupam Shri Rupam Tasya Grajam Uruparim Matarim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaramoho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratiti Kripaya Shri Gurum Tamnatosmi He Guru Gyanadadina Bhandho Swananda Data Koranaika Sindho Vrindavana Sinahita Avatar Rasida Radha Pranaya Prachara He Dina Bandho Korunaika Sindho Kuru Prasadam Mai Mandamudhe Baksha Parade Bahupapagade Tatpada Padme Stumatishta Krishna. I bow down to the beautiful lotus feet of my spiritual master, by whose causeless mercy I have obtained the supreme holy name, the divine mantra, the service of the son of Shachimata, the association of Srila Surup Damodar, Rupa Goswami and his older brother Sanatan Goswami, and the supreme abode of Mathura, the blissful abode of Vrindavan, the divine Radha Kund and Govardhan Hill, and the desire within my heart for the loving service of Sri Radhika and Madhava in Vrindavan. O spiritual master, O giver of divine wisdom, O friend of the fallen, you are the giver of your own bliss and your only ocean of mercy. Although dwelling in Vrindavan, you have descended for the welfare of fallen souls like myself, and you are preaching the divine love of Radha for Krishna. Please be kind upon me. O friend of the lowly, O Gurudev, you are the only ocean of mercy. I'm a dull fool and have committed hundreds of thousands of offenses. I've fallen into a dense myriad of sins. Therefore grace me with your mercy, so that my mind may be fixed on your lotus feet and on Sri Krishna. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. Our only wish is to have our consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens our darkened eyes and fills our hearts with transcendental knowledge. He is our Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord of the master to devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shades of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevalabha Gati Sadma Bando Mui Savadanu Mate Bando Mui Savadanu Mate Jahara prasade bhai bhavato riyajai. Krishna prapti hoy jaha hoy te.
Krishna prapti hoy jaha hoy te. Guru mukha padma vakya chitete koriya oikya. Guru mukha padma vakya chitete koriya oikya. Anakori ho mani asha. Anakori ho mani asha. Shri Guru Charane Rati Eshe Utama Gati. Shri Guru Charane Rati Eshe Utama Gati. Je praksare pure sarva asha. Je prashare pure sarva asha. Chakudam diloje janme janme prabhu se. Divya gyan hire prokashita. Divya gyan hire prokashita. Prema bhakti jaha hoite abidya vinasa jate. Prema bhakti jaha hoite abidya vinasa jate. Vede Gai Jahara Charito. Vede Gai Jahara Charito. Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu.
Gyaneshaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Paschatyarishakarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Kali Kukurkan Jadi Chao Hey Any Bengalis? Is there a Bengali in the house? Not one Bengali. No wonder I can't get any Bob. Okay, give her the mic. Kali Kukur Kada Jadi Chao Hey Kukur Kada Jadi Chao Hey.
So it means that if you want to be saved from the dog of Kali, or make the dog of Kali cry, then you have to sing the name of Sachinandan, and he is the one who will remove all the fear of Kali Yuga and make your life auspicious.
Haribo! Kali Yuga Pavana Koli Bhai Nashana Sri Sachinandana Gao. Hey! Kali pujita Gora. Nimani Vishwambar Srinivas Vishwa Bhakta Samua Chitta Chora. Nadiya Shastra my Purishwa Nam Kavartana Sura. Vihi Janna Shikshaka Nyasi Kulanayaka Manabarara Bhava Pura. Sarvabhauma Shorana Gajapati Karana Ramananda Poshana Veera. Rupananda Parana Sanatana Palana Haridas Morana Dida. Vajarat Bhavana Vishamata Sadhana Kapati Vigatana Kama. Shura Bhakta Palana Shisha Jnana Tarana Shala Bhakti Dushana Nama. Kali Tupur Sadham Jadid Sharo Kali Yuga Pavana Kali Purnashana Shikshati Nandana Kao. Hey! Hari Haraya Namah Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. Gopal Govinda Ram Sri Madhusudan. Giridhari Gopinath Madan Mohan. Caitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Sita. Hare Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita. Sri Rup Sanatan Bhakta Raghunath. Jiva Gopal Bhakta Das Raghunath. Echai Kosai Kori Charanavanan. Jahoite Vignanash Abhishta Puran. Echai Kosai Jar Munitar Das. Shukra. Tandera Charanna Sevi Bhakta Sanibas. Janame Janame Hoye Adilas. A side go side, Jabe Bhajya Kulabas. Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Koila Prakash. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Koila Prakash. Bolo Anande Bolo Hare Bhaja Vrindavan. Nande Bolo Hare Bhaja Vrindavan. Bolo Anande Bolo Hare Bhaja Vrindavan. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majamiyaman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Kore Ash. That's good, that's good. Hari Nam Sankirtan Kohe Narottamo Das. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Bol. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Radhe Gopala, Radha Shama Sundar, Radha Banki Bihari, Radha Gokulananda, Radha Ramana, Radha Shama Sundar, Radha Banki Bihari, Radha Banki Bihari, Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Madan Mohan,
Radha Gopinatha,
Vinata,
Radha Muridhara,
Radha Gi,
Radha Gopinatha,
Radha Shama Sundar,
Radha
Radha Kala
Radha Kala
Chanji,
Chanji,
Radha Gopinatha,
Radha Gopinata,
Radha Giridhari,
Radha Giridhari,
Kishore Kishori,
Kishore Kishore, Gandharvika Giridhari, Bhajare. Hey! Radha Govinda Gopala Hare. Hey, Radhe Govinda, Radhe Govinda. I say Shri Bhagavana ko mere barambar pranam hai. I say Shri Bhagavana ko mere. I say Shri Jnana Shyama ko mere barambar pranam hai. I say Shri Jnana Shyama mere barambar pranam hai. Go Premanande! Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Jayam Vishwabhat Paramahamsa Privraj Kachurja Stotaras Shishimad Abhay Charanara Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishwabhat Paramahamsa Privraj Kachurja Stotaras Shishimad Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavi Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gogopina Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Jamuna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Sambeta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. So now we have a couple of announcements. First from the Bhakti community, and then we hear from our Sankirtan department as we're inching towards our goal of 3 million Bhagavad Gitas for the year.
Hare Krishna, thank you everyone. We survived when Maharaj was not here. It almost felt like partial annihilation and now it's creation. We really missed you, but we survived and we had really consistent attendance in all our programs. We were really surprised by that, but it gave us a lot of hope that participants want to attend the programs and they are liking it and they are seeing the benefits. I want to just call out, Carl was here. I don't know if he's still around here. He attends every Saturday from Bhakti community. He comes to the temple. So he was here in the morning. And Vicky and Tim were here. Tim got COVID 2 weeks ago. He's doing well, but Vicky contacted it this week. So just sending prayers for them. They both are doing well, but they couldn't attend in person today. One more thing we did this period was consolidation. So we worked with Anand Caitanya Prabhu and his group on the Mantra House, and we started doing our Bhakti Circle format in the Mantra House at San Jose. We did 3 sessions, very, very successful, I would say. Just want to let you all know that there are a lot of people who are looking for information, who are looking for bhakti, who are out there in the market. It really made me really realize this time how important the social media plays a role. These small kids from college, university, they don't have anything to do over on a Saturday or a Friday. They are looking for opportunities to go to places where they can do something. And they can get anything in the marketplace over there. There were some folks who came there. They got so many things in the marketplace. I was really surprised to know that. So it felt to me that it's really, people are looking and we are here. What are we doing about it? It made me, actually when seeing person to person and getting all these audience, that realization was very strong. So thank you to Anand Chaitanya Prabhu for giving us the opportunity and platform to share. And also Vrindavan, who tirelessly works behind the scenes on such programs, cooking, talking to devotees, participants, arranging things. So it was very good. With that experience, we also got requests from Mountain House devotees to start our program there. So we are out there in the marketplace. The material is there. The videos are there for all of you to consume and use as much as you want. There is no proprietary about it. Reach out to us. All we request from you is to give us the Vaishnava Sangha Leva points. You do run your programs, use the material, and get the Vaishnava Sangha Leva points, which we want to always like to offer to Srila Prabhupada. We are also going to reach out to Bhagavad Seva Project. Sukeshwari Mataji connected us with some people who distribute Bhagavatam sets and then take care of all these people who receive Bhagavatams and take them on the spiritual journey. So let's all join forces. For me, next year is looking like the year of consolidations, where we have so many programs and we can all consolidate, join forces, work together and take care of all the newcomers, because we all have unique skills that we have developed over the years. And when we join forces, we become like a nuclear bomb. I felt that in the Mantra House. So thank you for everyone. If you are interested, please join forces and welcome the newcomers. So thank you.
Hare Krishna. I echo Pavani Bhakti Mataji's sentiments about you coming back. This morning I was thinking that we were just like in a small boat in the middle of the ocean, nowhere in the darkness, somehow trying to pedal, not sure where we were going. But then we finally saw the mothership coming. And the captain puts a light on our small boat. So thank you, Prabhu, for coming back. And we were worried. And as Prabhu was mentioning, we are inching towards our goal. We still have a lot of goal left. I was thinking why this happens every time this time of the year, because we keep increasing our last year's quota. Even though we did a lot and very nice this year, we still have quite some to do. Maybe at least 100,000 more book points to go. So we're requesting all the devotees to please come and participate. And today, Vaisesika Prabhu mentioned a very important point. if we wanted to see Paramatma everywhere, book distribution is one of the opportunities where you can see. And I wanted to share 2 examples of how different kind of people we meet and the experiences that we get and how we can get a glimpse of the Paramatma. One was people who are envious and how we should avoid them. I don't know, I think we went with Achyuta Kumar Prabhu to one of the doors, and that person said, I read your Bhagavad Gita and I don't like what you say in it. I said, why? He said, you call Lord Shiva as sour milk. And we were trying to appease him and said that we're not expert in Bhagavad Gita, but definitely there is nowhere in the Bhagavad Gita it's mentioned that Lord Shiva is sour milk, but maybe it's maybe yoga transform, maybe that's where he got confused. He said, no, he was just arguing. No, I will find it. I have the version, I have the Bhagavad Gita. And he said he will write to us, but he never wrote back yet. So we just offered him some nice words, and then we said, please let us know how we can help you. We just left him alone, and we came back. And that was one part of realizing. The second one was, we went to Pumpkin Festival. I was with Hari, and we were just at the table, just minding our own business and distributing books to somebody else. And then one African-American lady, her name is Blenda, she comes to the table and she says, excuse me, I have a question. And then she said that she has a very traumatic experience because she was driving and she hit somebody. It's not because of her fault, but that somebody just came in, and it happens to be a small child. And she was not able to forgive herself. She tried to approach the family, but they were so distraught, they didn't even want to do anything. And she's saying, I'm struggling with this for the past many years, how to overcome this. And she genuinely wanted to understand, what does your culture talk about how to overcome this? And then I gave a little bit about karma, and then she said, what is the karma of a small child? She's just 4-year-old child. How does that child have a karma? Then we talked about the Bhagavad Gita picture where the soul moves from one body to another, so karma is not just from this life, but from the previous births as well. That actually gave her a revelation. Oh, which means the body changes and everything, and she was able to connect to that really well. And just 2 days ago, I just sent her a message, how are you doing? And she said, I finished all your 3 books. So this is the example that Prabhu was giving, that people who are innocent, whom we can give as much as possible. So this is one of the category. And there are many more examples like this we meet every time we go door to door, book distribution on streets and everywhere. And this is a time in December especially, November, December, people are looking for some way to connect with their families and some way to reflect. So please, please, please do participate. And we have a goal of distributing many more Bhagavad Gitas. So please join us. Today we have many teams going out. Western team is going out to some places in San Francisco and Santa Cruz. And we have door-to-door book distribution in Fremont, Dublin. As Fremont, there are 2 locations, and Dublin as well. So please do join us. And thank you so much, Prabhu, for coming back. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say, strike while the iron is hot. And we just happen to have we're in an ideal time. As Prabhupada Bhakti said, people are very open. And as Malini just said, we have a wide open field. Some places in the world right now, like China, it's nearly impossible. It is impossible to go out and just meet people and tell them about Krishna consciousness. They have to do everything in private, secret. Everything online is coded so that nobody knows what's going on because everything's listened to and it's prohibited. There are many other countries like that. We just happen to be in an ideal place in Silicon Valley where people are more
than usual opened to spirituality, and we also have the freedom. We don't know how long any of these will last. We can't just say that it'll go on forever, but somehow or other we've been put in this position. So that is, we've been offered the service in this place. So if we can look at it as a palette, and the more we can fill it in and make it something beautiful here in the Silicon Valley. Beauty means compassion and friendliness and extending ourselves in meaningful ways to people as much as possible. Then the more we'll have a portrait that's really beautiful to offer to Krishna. I've always envisioned here in the Bay Area, which is where I grew up, a shining example of Krishna consciousness that would be an ideal for people all over the world. So we can achieve this by taking advantage of every opportunity for service we have, especially outreach, and also trying to make improvements on everything that we do, a little bit at a time, and praying for Krishna's mercy that we can fulfill Prabhupada's desire and create a thriving community here. It is thriving. We'd like to expand it and have more people come into it so that it has a amplified effect all over the world, especially because Silicon Valley is a showcase for the world as well. Could we do that? Yes. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Lakshmi Nrsingadev, if you so desire, please empower us to expand our community and our outreach so that more and more people can take to Krishna consciousness, and we can make a shining example that will be exemplary all over the world and inspire people. Thank you for considering our request. Also, please help us smash our goals for Bhakti Sangalabha and for our book points. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone who agrees with this prayer in whole or in part, please say Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande Haribo. Sharirat Vijaja Jodendriyata Heka Vibe Pele Vishaya Shagare Tarma Jeti Vayati Loba Musudurmati Taki Jitta Katita Shanshare Krishna Barodoya Moy Tori Bari Jihvajai Shaprasadana Dilobai Shayanamrita Pao Radha Krishna Guna Gao Preme Dako Shri Caitanya Nihitai Preme Dako Shri Caitanya Nihitai Mahaprasade Govinde Nama Brahmani Vaishnave Tappa Punyavatam Rajan Vishwaso Navijayate Prasade Sarva Dukhanam Anirasyo Pajayate Prasana Chetaso Yashu Buddhipaya Bhatistate Tvayopa Bhukta Shaganda Vasadankara Charchitaha Utishta Bojino Dasas Tavamayam Jaimahi Bhagavat Shri Mahaprasadiki Gaur Premanande Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Please come take prasadam. Hari Bol. Vandrakalpadurishya